cryptic in the overall invitation to the conference day, where actually there was something related to a mysterious ceremony that should have been taken at the end of the whole day. It was actually to stimulate the surprise that we hoped to enhance now. We start with this because this is something that the Physiological Society has put in their website recently, and it is nice because it is our university actually, and it is celebrating physiology in Italy. The event you are about to attend is something that is actually celebrating physiology in this building, in Milano, in Italy in general, for science and particularly for physiology. Let's move to the next one. Here you have some hints, at least. Many of us knew about this picture. We are talking about Professor Rodolfo Margaria, who was in this building starting in 1937 and ending in 1977, something like that. The reason why we are celebrating these scientists, well, I don't give a word to this, I give this to the delegation of the Physiological Society here today, and we are so honored to have you here to bring this celebration to this scientist of ours. I will just try to be quick in a short profile. Well, here you can see that the main title already gives you an idea of what we will be doing. We are not very accustomed to the concept of the blue plaque, but that will be explained, I guess, by with us, and also by David. It is important just to signal one thing. You can see there the Physiological Society 150th anniversary celebration. So 150 years ago, it was the very start of the Physiological Society. What I forgot to tell you, and that is the second writing, the physiology at Unimi, meaning this building, started in 1926. So we have the century anniversary this year. So we are about to have other ceremonies of celebration for this anniversary this year, particularly in November, that was the real start of the building. Well, I could tell you many things about Rodolfo Margaria with numbers. That was my plan, but since I turned the light off, better show you the slides. Oh, dear me. I will be very fast on this part. Professor Margaria was a medicine doctor. He started studying in theory, but he studied with Ravitska, who was a very famous physiologist at the beginning of the last century. Then he moved to other cities, but the end of his path was in Milan, where he stayed many, many decades in this building, by being the director of physiology here. He was very keen to move internationally, and that's something that he has been taught to by his previous mentor, but certainly he collaborates to teach it even to many of his pupils and of many of his collaborators. He has been, for instance, cumulatively 4 years in the States, 1 year in Germany, 2 years in the UK, fostering the concept of collaboration as a great value. And this was something that was then transmitted in all the lineages of professors that he generated and of the lineages of the different topics he was working with. But well, he was also a member of the Accademia dei Lincei, of the Istituto Lombardo di Scienze e Lettere. The list is very long, but as you can imagine, we would need maybe one entire afternoon to talk about all the details of Professor Margaria. Some of those will be listed also by Professor Di Prampero, who will speak in a minute from now. And I mentioned that Professor Di Prampero, together with Professor Ferretti, recently for the Springer Verlag, wrote a book where a few chapters are concentrated on the life of Professor Rodolfo Margaria. So if you are interested in the deep details about his life, I suggest you to have a look to that one. The movie that I'm about to show you now, it's an interesting movie done in 1959 by the Italian television. It is in Italian, but we added, and I have to say thanks to Mario Legramandi who did the translation, we added the subtitle in English for the things that Rodolfo Margaria is saying. So you can have a look to Rodolfo Margaria in activity, in the lab, trying to explain to the cameraman and the interviewer the core of his activity at that moment.
Dirige l'Istituto di Fisiologia della Università di Milano il professor Margaria, uno dei maggiori fisiologi in campo mondiale. Siamo stati a visitarlo mentre controllava un esperimento col professor Gualtierotti. Scusi professore, che cosa sta facendo?
Stiamo misurando il lavoro respiratorio. Lo misuriamo attraverso determinazioni di pressione endopolmonare e di variazioni del volume dei polmoni, come fanno gli ingegneri nella misurazione del diagramma pressione-volume dei motori a scoppio o delle macchine a vapore. È interessante vedere come si misurano le variazioni di pressione, perché per la misurazione della pressione intratoracica bisogna ingerire un manometro che va a finire nel terzo dell'esofago. Il soggetto, ecco, questo è il palloncino, questo è il manometro che viene ingerito dal soggetto, mangialo. Il manometro viene connesso a questo strumento, attacca il boccaglio, così contemporaneamente si registrano anche le variazioni di pressione, di volume.
Ecco, adesso sta muovendo.
E a che cosa servono queste ricerche?
Queste vengono utilizzate ai fini della conoscenza della fisiologia dell'apparato respiratorio, anzitutto, ma queste hanno anche molte applicazioni pratiche, per esempio nello studio della medicina sportiva, nello studio della resistenza dell'uomo alle grandi altezze e anche in patologia.
Secondo
That's it, actually. You would wonder why I'm showing this. First of all, because it is a unique opportunity to listen to his voice. But there is something that always impressed me in a very positive way. Whenever he was saying that pressure and volume had some importance in the knowledge of mechanics of vehicles, of cars. He was mentioning automobile, internal combustion engine. It's something that biology people, medicine doctor and things like that never know one bit of it. And Professor Margaria was comparing everything he had around. So the main word that I would throw to you that is representing this scientist is, in my opinion, curiosity. Curiosity because it is curiosity with no limits. And this is the real point, something that is a very important feature of life science. You can have a look here at a couple of subjects. They are mixed not in a very proper way, but it is just to mention all the possible fields where Rodolfo Margaria put attention, science, and quality of science, we could say. And there is another very important point. For increasing the knowledge in this area, he was in a way following what later on has been called, in many places, the applied physiology. Most of these disciplines adhere to the applied physiology. So he was one of the former enthusiasts about, and also he was working in the era of physiology. Well, what it is even written on the plaque. We have said that he had a big talent in chemistry, we could say biochemistry, in physics. Nowadays we are calling this sometimes biophysics, but this is the concept in a way, and curiosity is there. Applied physiology is something that, in my opinion, pertains very much to this kind. I found this article that I can suggest, the emergence of applied physiology within the discipline of physiology. I don't want to be long on this, but there is a table where you can see that close to 1948, even scientific journals put the word applied together with physiology. So mostly it was a need coming from the war, because we had to apply physiology to moving in the mountains, to fly aeroplanes at very high altitude, to be able to swim and use scuba diving for military reasons. So applied physiology started that way. I'll show you briefly something that I found in a drawer here in this building. This was a scheme written, certainly, by Rodolfo Margaria, where it is difficult to be seen properly, but you could see in the upper part there are different tanks. This is the tanks for, oops, better yes. But this was the very first sketch. Here we have sort of a tank for oxidative, for aerobic consumption. Here we have a tank for the phosphocreatine, and here we have a tank for the what is called lactate here. But actually, all of them are metabolic equivalent of aerobic, anaerobic, and phosphagen used for exercise. Both, the three of them converge in this valve, and there is nothing else. But what this was the design made by the graphic assistant. We don't have any more graphic assistant nowadays, unfortunately. And this kind of scheme was taken by McMahon many years later, and he added the engine, as you can see. Every single ATP can come from the three sources and can go there in the engine. We don't have time to go into the details, but that has been done for teaching and show what happens for the recovery from light exercise to a situation where there is heavy exercise, and then the recovery from that condition. Finally, this is something that I produce myself. It's the modern, let's say, analogy of that scheme. This is a program I wrote in LabVIEW that we still show students, because this is an active scheme where you give some data about the power, the mechanical power you want to have, or select an activity and give a speed, and then you can see the time course of the energy consumption live, accelerated in a way, so that you can see what happens for long-term physical activity. I'm close to my ending, and I wanted just to show which one were the collaborators of Professor Cavagna. And these numbers are the number of papers by Cavagna where each of those collaborators appears, and you can find here some names that probably you are aware of. Still, by looking at the topics here on the right side, you can understand how each of these strands created a school of thinking with many, many scientists which created the lineages of production, of scientific production in Italy. We have today the privilege to have here Professor Di Prampero, here, who worked many, many years with Professor Margaria, and that will say something in you. Finally, I don't know whether you are familiar with this, but people from Milano should know that there is a road, a street entitled to Professor Margaria. I don't know what they specified medical.
That's what everybody does now.
I would have preferred physiology. Never practice or medicine, no, in this case. And now we will have the rest of the speech. And it is my honor to present Daria Verdes from the Physiological Society. She is the chief executive officer of the society, who will tell us about the certain more details. Thank you.
So I very first met Alberto back in 2024, when Alberto was awarded by the board of the Physiological Society fellowship, which is reserved for those members of the highest standing and have really contributed to the discipline. And it has been a great collaboration. I am not a physiologist, but I love my job because I get to meet some of the most interesting people doing discovery, applied and translational physiology. And I would really like to thank Alberto for welcoming the Physiological Society to the Physiology Division and at Milan University, and particularly to Work in Progress, which I hadn't realised was Work in Progress about your science. I was like, it's very strange. Why do they call all of these symposia Work in Progress? Have they not yet got the programme sorted? And then it suddenly clicked. And I just wanted to make a few comments about the day. It has been truly fantastic. I have really enjoyed it, and what a breadth of research you have showcased. And in that true spirit of collaboration, I have taken away so many ideas about what good sharing of science looks like. And I made a few notes as we were going through. Your engagement is inclusive across career stages. You do rapid knowledge exchange in a very short time span, which really makes people focus on the nub of their message. And most importantly, the format has shifted from one of, well, I published this research and here are my slides, to actually, this is research in progress. Please, can you comment, give me your ideas, give me your feedback, in that true collaborative spirit. And I said to Sarah, we have to take this home and do something like this. This is such good practice. And we have learned a lot from being here. So I think we also need to recognise you need an absolutely brilliant chair. And your chair was amazing today. He ran up and down those stairs like a gazelle.
He's doing now.
Yeah. You had super high energy, and you did everything with humour to move the programme along. So as Alberto said, this is the Society's 150th year, and we were co-founded all those years ago by 19 men in John Bernard Sanderson's house, and that was when we were really a dining club and a society for gentlemen researchers. And I say, how amazing, we were built on a great heritage, but I'm so pleased that we now see inclusion and we now see a completely diverse group of physiologists representing the discipline. So, this is a very special event. This is one of our blue plaques. To get awarded, an institute to be awarded a blue plaque, it has to go to nominations committee and the board, and we have to take in references. So it is quite a long process. Now, Rodolfo already came with good form because he was an honorary fellow of the Physiological Society. And then we reached out to referees, and Damien, who is Editor-in-Chief of Experimental Physiology, Fellow of the Society, and also a practicing physiologist, will speak a little bit more about it. But I just want to say, to get a blue plaque is a very high bar to cross. And we're delighted because this is our first international blue plaque. We have them in the UK and we have one in the Republic of Ireland. And I couldn't be more delighted that we had in Alberto a champion, and we have a great physiologist to honour. So across our year, if you do look at the website, there is lots going on. I would love you to come over. We're in all regions of the UK and Ireland. There's tons of programmes in all areas of physiology. So do take a look, do come over, do meet us, do join us. And in honour of our 150th year, the Board of Trustees have brought out a new category called Associate of the Physiological Society, and that is a free membership open to all physiologists that are card-carrying physiologists. And we'd be delighted if you wanted to be part of this membership. And I really look forward to further work with the Milan University and with the Italian physiology group in general. I've been to several meetings through FEPS. I've always been impressed by the numbers that turn up and the physiology that is done here. And with that, I would hand over to Damien, who will tell you more about the blue plaques. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Daria. It's an absolute pleasure on behalf of the Physiological Society, and as an individual, I guess, as a physiologist who has, and I'll say this up front, my life's passion has been oxygen transport. So be it from muscle, be it from the heart and the lungs, be it to the brain, and this has been an absolute delight today, and an absolute pleasure to be able to stand here and sing the praises, really, to celebrate the achievements of Professor Margaria with a little love.
Is this the first?
Just one. Yeah, that's it. Any seconds now. So, as I mentioned, the Blue Plaque Award, so this is the Physiological Society's Blue Plaques Honour. It celebrates outstanding physiologists, as Dariel mentioned, who contributed to the advancement of the discipline. And a really important part of this is, through their discoveries, they've left a legacy beyond their lifetime. And interacting with many of the physiologists today, and some engineers, which I think is physiology in disguise as well. It's been absolutely clear that Professor Margaria has left an incredible, a lasting legacy. I've had a great opportunity to meet up with some old friends as well, and to witness the outstanding research. As Dariel mentioned, when you go to the website, this is what you see, very much constrained to the UK and to the Republic of Ireland. The first blue plaque was awarded in 2021 to no other than Charles Sherrington, and this was awarded in Oxford, and so this speaks to the standard, the quality if you like. But it gives us great pleasure that this is the first one that's been awarded outside of the UK and the Republic of Ireland, here in Italy, which is a fabulous country that many of us have had the good fortune to spend a bit of time and work in. And Milan. We were convinced the weather was going to be warm and sunny. We packed shades and shorts and flip-flops. For the first time, it's colder here than it is back in the UK. But it's been an absolute delight. And well, I must say a very special thank you. You should all also acknowledge another great here as well. And this is Alberto Margaria. Alberto wrote an outstanding application, and I had the honor and the pleasure to review this, and it was just an absolute no-brainer. And so, Professor Rodolfo Margaria, I was only 13 years old when he left that time. And so I never had the opportunity to meet him, and it was an absolute delight to listen to his voice as well for the first time, and it's wonderful that members of his family are here as well. But his scientific contributions, just at a very, very high level, the work he's done on muscle bioenergetics, respiratory function, the biomechanics of locomotion, to me has taught me the importance of creativity in science, creativity in physiology, and he was a true Renaissance man. And we talked a little bit about some of his work. He's rubbed shoulders with some of the best. Archibald Vivian Hill, D.B. Gill, as you can see in the top right-hand corner here in the Boston Fatigue Laboratory. And this paper for me was absolutely outstanding. I mean, these are the papers that form the basis of Nobel Prizes in many ways. And it was so incredibly insightful. The work has been challenged, of course, like any good science should be challenged, but for this to be published in 1933 and to have the foresight mechanistically from a bioenergetics perspective is truly remarkable. And D.B. Dill's boss, Professor Henderson, he wasn't an easy man to please. He really wasn't. He set the bar extraordinarily high. And D.B. Dill wanted to communicate this message to Professor Margaria and say that on behalf of Henderson, D.B. Dill's boss, he quickly developed great admiration for your intelligence and your scientific brilliance. And that was a huge compliment from a very prestigious man. So for me, a few of the personal reflections, and this again speaks to the importance of curiosity and rigor in science, and we saw all of that today. The loping or the hopping astronauts, as you saw. So Professor Margaria, he was making insights long before any of these events took place. So as you can see on the right-hand side, the Apollo 11 mission, incredible to be able to, and we hear a presentation today, incredible to figure out that this is the way astronauts can move with the inverted pendulum, and leaving a legacy, including Alberto Manetti's work, looking at human locomotion, and Giovanni Corani as well, of course. I mean, huge insights. And this is the beauty of physiology, predicting things before they actually happen. What a wonderful thing. And this really struck a chord with me. At the time I was doing my postdoc in San Diego with Peter Wagner and John West. And I sat down with John West, who was fascinated by British people. And we used to drink tea at 2 o'clock every day. And we talked a lot about this. That Margaria was convinced we couldn't climb Everest without supplemental oxygen. Below 300 millimeters of mercury barometric pressure. And he had done the work. And Joseph Barcroft, as Alberto Manetti mentioned, Margaria decided to travel and collaborate. And this is, by the way, for all early career researchers, travel, collaborate, work with the best, and you'll become the best. And this is exactly the approach to Margaria. He was fascinated by the 1924 British Mount Everest expedition to try to climb Everest. This was actually, Ed led this as the deputy leader. because the original leader fell sick with malaria shortly into the expedition. And he got 300 meters from the summit without supplemental oxygen. And of course, this is the famous expedition where Mallory and Irving were lost. And so Joseph Barcroft in Oxford, and you can see the assistant there. The assistant was a very, very stern Sergeant Major military, Sergeant Major Secker, who ran the lab in Barcroft's lab in Oxford, and invited Margaria to come and do experiments in order to show that it is, in fact, quite possible. And we saw a diagram of this earlier on today. And you can see, as mentioned, Margaria, and I'm a little bit disappointed, and I apologize in advance for Joseph Barcroft misspelling Professor Margaria's name. There's an E instead of an A, which is a bit of a mistake, but that's okay. And you can see Barcroft breathing supplemental oxygen as well as Margaria. And Margaria, Professor Margaria, there was box stepping around about 15 box steps a minute, working very hard. He took the barometric pressure down to 180 millimeters of mercury. And that really teaches us that he was an adventurer. He liked to push the boundaries. These are tough experiments they have to ethics committees today. And he was doing this on himself. And of course, as we mentioned earlier on, he was complaining of pain in his knees and pain in his legs, and this was acute decompression sickness. You're washing out nitrogen whilst breathing in oxygen at low pressure. And so these are, these are not for the faint-hearted experiments. And of course, Douglas sitting back, smoking a pipe in true Oxford fashion, which is not what we recommend as physiologists, of course. And another thing that I took from the early work was that Kendall, when he was doing this experiment, was working very hard. And he was exercising at 164 beats per minute. But Professor Margaria was exercising at 88 beats per minute. So there's some physiology there, whether or not there was chronotropic incompetence, but something very interesting. So it's become clear to us today, and this is what I discussed with Professor West, and we talked extensively about Professor Margaria's work, was that we really are on the limits of human performance when we climb Mount Everest without supplemental oxygen. And we saw some earlier work from Bolzano, from Uganda, to demonstrate that. And with VO2 maxes of around about 1 liter per minute, we're close to the edge. And I'm fascinated by Professor Margaria's curiosity and acceptance that this is in fact possible, despite earlier work suggesting bioenergetically perhaps it wouldn't be possible. So again, that accepting, curious, gentlemanly scientific approach to his work always shines through. And of course we know in 1978, Reinhold Messner and Peter Haber climbed Everest without supplemental oxygen. And at the time were challenging the status quo of some of the experimental findings. So, celebrating Professor Margaria's life and this wonderful award, which is so timely, it makes me realize that we need to know as much about the man as we do about the scientist. And I saw a lot of that today. What was quite unique for me today was that there were PIs, professors in the audience, that are working collegially with everyone, collaborating with everyone, being very pleasant. There was great comedy, great humor, but it was very collegial, and people could ask questions. I don't often see presentations in the UK when the student stands up and says, I need to ask you questions before I start my presentation. And it's a wonderful example of the legacy, I feel, that Professor Margaria has left, and professors, eminent professors, are continuing to instill in their students. So all of you early career researchers, have a little think about some of these adjectives. Foster curiosity and humility, commitment to mentorship, intellectual generosity, strong scientific rigor, a collegial spirit, a true joy in discovery, and for me, one of the most important features is this enduring legacy of inspiration. And I feel that if Professor Margaria was here today, 40 years on, I think he would be extraordinarily proud of the work that's going on and the collegial spirit in which the work is being produced. So great pleasure to be able to award this on behalf of the Physiological Society, and highly deserved.
We are supposed to.
Should we do a countdown?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we're going to, shall I explain?
Oh, wow.
Okay, shall I? Oh, it's so bossy. So what we're going to do, it'd be great. Can we count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then they are going to do with a flourish, and then you can photograph it. They will flourish the profile, and then we'll be able to see the plaque underneath. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
As I was mentioning before, we have the honor and privilege that here one of the pupils, last pupil, we could say, of Rodolfo Margaria, Professor Enrico Di Prampero. We are honored also because we have a delegation of Professor Margaria's family here, and I will leave the floor to Pietro.
Thank you very much, Alberto. I'm really emotional and honored of remembering Professor Margaria, and I want to thank the Physiological Society and Alberto for having organized all this, and for you all for being here, and Dr. Elsa Margaria, daughter of Margaria, Professor, and representing the family of the Grand Old Master. And it is, I don't need to add anything to what has been said about his personality, his intelligence, his curiosity. I want to add a couple of things. Only one, that he was very active also in the Italian Physiological Society, of which he has been president for some years, I don't remember when. And I want to express his gratitude personally. For me, I worked with him since the early 60s of the last century until he retired in 1972, 73, whatever. And I learned from him, and the curiosity, intellectual curiosity, and he taught us to derive hypotheses, come si dice? Ipotesi creative, creative hypotheses to fit the experimental data in such a way that, as he used to say, the experiments should not become raccolta di francobolli. Yeah, this was his very, very, very magnificent work, and his humor, his spirit. I remember once discussing in his room over there with some colleagues who are not here anymore, unfortunately, that he looked strictly. One of us that was exaggerating in his obsession. Well, you know, tutti hanno diritto di essere stupidi, ma tu ne esageri. Everybody has the right. Of course, you are exaggerating. But he was saying, in such a way, not insulting anybody, but it was a great sense of humor and great of love with us. I don't think I want to waste you any more time, to thank everybody here for having attended this nice meeting, and to Gaspar and Alberto Meti for having organized this. And I wanted to say one last thing, that let's remember together with Rodolfo Margaria all his pupils that are no more here, Emilio Gostoni, Giovanni Cavagna, Giuseppe Sant'Ambrosio, Paolo Ceratelli, che still Franco Saibene, Mugnoni, Cortilli, everybody, all friends that we remember with great love, and of course, sooner or later, we will meet him up there. Thank you very much.
I know it's late, but we have the last speech. Dr. Francesco Luciano will provide a modern and a modern view about the scientific production of Professor Margaria, seen by somebody who is much younger than the average age in this group.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Please let me say that I was asked to give a speech about how a young researcher sees Professor Margaria and his heritage. And let me say, I feel humbled as well as really under pressure of talking about Professor Margaria in front of great scientists, some of whom really know him personally. So I decided that I would not talk about how I see Professor Margaria, but instead I would ask people and scientists about the great old stories that we know about Professor Margaria. And in these stories, what struck me most was there was this word coming up again and again, pioneer. A pioneer in exercise physiology, a pioneer in respiratory physiology, a pioneer in locomotion biomechanics. But the more I heard these stories, the more I grew convinced that he was not only a pioneer in the scientific fields, he was also a pioneer in communicating this science, in applying science and physiology to tackle societal questions and needs. And we saw how in the 1950s, Italian television was just born, and he understood that it was also meant to spread culture and to let people know what great science was going on here. And I think this was ahead of the times. And the list could be long. 1960s, actually 1961, the world was changing, and music was changing the world. And Margaria publishes a vinyl record. Two sides, on one side, a song by Ruth Gassman, on the other side, a sex education lesson. Truly ahead of the times. You can search it on YouTube. Incredible. And again, one other thing that came up from these stories, and actually people who met him in person told me, is that he was as thorough in disseminating science and in applying physiology as he was in his fundamental research. And on this topic, a couple of years ago, some colleagues at the Institute discovered a pack of letters, a correspondence between Professor Margaria and the Coca-Cola company. And it's beautiful to see these old letters with this big vintage letterhead Coca-Cola logo addressed to Professor Margaria. And the correspondence goes on for years, at least about 4 years we found. And the correspondence starts with this. I want to read you. November 9, 1950, from the Coca-Cola Export Corporation to Professor Margaria. Dear Sir, please find enclosed a report on the physiological effects of phosphoric acid ingestion. In case you have some other available information on the physiological action of phosphoric acid, we should be very happy to hear from you. I think they asked for clarification on the health effect of phosphoric acid because it was included in their beverage. And we don't have the response from Professor Margaria, but I like to think that he asked for really thorough questions about the composition of the beverage, because then, November 27, 1950, from the Coca-Cola Export Corporation to Professor Margaria, in reply to your request for information on the composition of the beverage Coca-Cola, I am sending you an official analysis, grams per liter, saccharose 59.8, caffeine 0.14, phosphoric acid 0.55, and so on. And then they must say that for the vegetable extracts used, they can only say that they're similar to those used in the food industry all over the world. Here I like to think that Professor Margaria was close to discovering the secret Coca-Cola formula. But anyway, things go on for long, and Professor Margaria asked for the titration curve of the beverage, pH measurements in different preparations of the beverage, years 1951, 1952, 1953, and then finally, 1st of August 1954, Professor Margaria sends a memorandum on the on the health effects of phosphoric acid in beverages, and he examines its role as a constituent of cells, its metabolism, connection with ATP and energy metabolism, toxicity, effect on acid-base balance, derivation from metabolism of other food ingredients, physiology of excretion, and even any evidence of its effects on teeth enamel. He also attaches experiments they had conducted ad hoc on the minerals on teeth enamel exposed to phosphoric acid. By the way, the conclusion was clear. There was no evidence to prevent from consuming beverages with phosphoric acid. And I like to think that it's also thanks to Professor Margaria that we can enjoy our Coke at our favorite seminar aperitivos. And that said, I'm also realizing that I'm perhaps the last thing between you and the great aperitivo waiting for us. Or another thing, but I'll be between you and that. So, in thanking the Physiological Society for this great event and opportunity, just let me say that whether we're going to toast today with some wine or with a Coke, I think we're going to toast to Professor Margaria.
We have the luck today of having here Professor Blasi, who is the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine, and since he found the time to come, because actually today our department is undertaking another celebration for a different topic, but it took the time to pass through, and that's why possibly to say a few words about it today.
Okay, I just want to welcome all of you. I think for the School of Medicine and for the University of Milan, it's a great honor to receive the Blue Plaque. And I want to thank the Physiological Society for giving us the opportunity to reconvene all together. And I'm really happy to see so many young faces around. That means that there is still work for you. And certainly the future of our university will be great. You know, the School of Medicine of University of Milan is the first one in Italy in terms of scientific production, in terms of both quantity but more on quality of research published. So this is clearly, we are very proud to be part of the University of Milan, and having such a maestro with us is certainly very important. And I think this kind of occasion are quite important to rethink to our history, because history is the base for the future. So knowing what was the past and our maestros are important to pave the way for the future of our School of Medicine. And I think that the next future with the new campus, with the new possibility we will have in terms of laboratories and so on, we are spending a lot of money for this, but certainly it will be very important to have all of you on board working on for the University of Milan. And I also have been asked from the rector of the university, Professor Marina Brambilla, to say that we are very proud to be here, to have this building, and the physiology that they started 100 years ago. So it's clearly, as I said, this history is there, and now we are moving to the future for having more and more success. And you know, we are on our pathway to new things in the future, but we have to think always to our history. So thank you very much.
And with the blue plaque, with the Coca-Cola story, it's time to drink something, to toast to Margaria. So please go down slowly by the stairs, eat whatever you can, and also drink whatever you can.
Please measure the efficiency of downward.
Drink some Coke.